Hey, what is up guys? It's Lewpac here, back with another Albion Online video for you. And in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the mid-season Percival patch, which dropped actually on the 18th of September, but I'm just getting around to making a video about the changes now. Now, as with these patch notes videos that we do, we'll actually be focusing mostly on the balance changes and how they affect the game and the PvP meta and stuff like that. However, I will take a quick glance over the other stuff as we go down, just to give you a bit of an overview of what's going on. There's usually a big mid-season patch, and then there's usually an end-of-season patch which ties in with the next expansion. The next expansion, Queen, doesn't have a release date yet, but you've definitely got reason to be excited. SBI have stated that it is the biggest and most ambitious expansion they've ever released for the game. They did release the dev diary of all of the world changes and season changes. That's up on the official Albion YouTube now, but it's definitely going to be an exciting time. So, within the run-up to that, this is probably the last big balance pass we get, I believe, unless the expansion is delayed. But anyway, nonetheless, we'll get into the notes for the mid-season patch for Percival Patch 5. So the improved guild logs, this is just quality of life for guilds. People have been asking about this for a long time. What's important is a lot of guilds that have got scammed have not been scammed by a certain person. The certain person has actually invited a new person to the guild, promoted them to a role that let them steal a bunch of stuff, and then that new person stole all the stuff. And you're not actually able to know who invited, who gave the permission, stuff like that. So now that's been added to the logs. Players who have had their guild roles changed is now in the logs, and you can see who actually changed the permission. So that will help with fighting scammers. You can also get a log of who joined and who left. Just little things that help guild leaders and guild officers manage their guilds a bit better. You've also got the guild role on the member logs now. Just little quality of life there. Next up then, off the back of the recent changes to the crafting plot auction system, we've got another change to crafting stations. Just a workaround for a little cheeky scam some of the shop owners have been running. Basically, what people used to do was have a really cheap public fee, a really expensive associate fee, and it makes it look like the shop was really good for the public to use. However, pretty much every alliance, every guild in the game was added as an associate. So when you got there, you were actually paying the extortionate associate fee, even though you didn't know you were an associate beforehand. Now they've just made a change that the associate fee can never be higher than the user fee, because if you have associates, why on earth would they ever want to pay more than what the public pays? That's just silly. It was used as a scam, and it's just been adjusted. If the associate fee is set higher than the user fee is now automatically increased to be the associate fee. So you'll be able to spot this a mile off, and you know, it's just a silly little change, but I'm sure a lot of people have been caught out of this. Some people just go into autopilot when they're crafting, so it's good to know that this has been handled. Other changes and improvements then. Unlockable mount skin tokens now tell you what mount they use, that's good. Trash now states that it's a destroyed item and tells you what tier it was, which is kind of good because new players didn't actually know what trash was a lot of the time. The trash rate isn't actually explained in the game at any point, which is, you know, another thing that should be in the tutorial, in my opinion. The game definitely needs to do a better job of explaining mechanics within the game. A lot of people have to go to the Albion wiki or the Albion website or even my YouTube to find out about stuff, and that's great. I think if people want to search out more information, they should be able to, but the bottom line is they should have access to that information in game as well. New icon for cleanse. More icons is better for skills. We've got too many skills in the game that have the same icon as other stuff. The quicker that's sorted out, the better. Morgana Raven Priestess got voiceover lines, and the Keeper Earthchild got a makeover. Next up, we have a bunch of mob changes for the PvE. I'm not going to go into these individually because honestly, I don't do a hell of a lot of PvE right now, because before they introduced random dungeons, I'd already ground 3 characters to tier 8 in their respective weapons and armor in the old static dungeons, which was mind-numbing. I've played random dungeons, I've played plenty of random dungeons, but I don't grind them day in, day out enough to know what these balance changes are going to affect. I'm sure they're all just things people have complained about or the balance team thought needed to happen. And it's just good that they are keeping PvE at the forefront. Now, obviously, with random dungeons, solo and group, and soon raids as well on the roadmap, raid content was announced. I'm super interested to see how that's worked. PvE is definitely heading in the right direction. It's a million miles better than it was at launch, which is great. And I do think PvE, even though Albion is a PvP-based game, PvE should still be at the forefront. It's still the main activity for leveling up your character skills, and there's a huge chunk of the community that enjoy PvE. Just because we're a PvP-focused game doesn't mean we can't have good PvE. So just seeing them actively balancing mobs, obviously adding new rooms, new enemies, new bosses, every expansion as well is super good, because the more variety in the map pool there is, the more interesting your random dungeons are going to be. I do kind of wish that the dungeons spawned a little bit more interesting rather than being completely linear. I wish, like, maybe particularly the bigger dungeons, the map dungeons, I'd love like a 0.3 map dungeon to be a sprawling labyrinth. But I think I'm ranting a little bit, so I think what I will actually aim to do is do an entire video about PvE in Albion, what my thoughts are on it, PvE in a PvP game, stuff like that. And I'll make that its own video sometime soon. So on to the real stuff then, the balance changes. I really apologize that it took me 6 minutes to get into the balance changes, because that's probably what you're here for. I always rant in my videos, people moan about it, but what can you do? You're still here. Let's go then with the balance changes. Arcane staffs then. Buffs all round pretty much for the normal stuff. So arcane protection, the little Q shield, which most arcane supports or arcane tanks are going to be using. Arcane DPS isn't really a thing at the moment, so arcane protection is the go-to Q. 2 meter range buff, same with arcane purge. Very, very strong right now in this meta, purging. So arcane purge having 2 meter buff, a lower cast time and a lower hit delay is super good. So we have seen a few people messing around with arcane tanks in 5v5. I haven't seen it really stick yet, but maybe it's the future, maybe it's good. It's hard to justify a full arcane support though in GVGs right now, because there just isn't that much space in the lineup. If it was 6v6, I think a support class would be super useful. But right now it really is the healer tank and 3 DPS meta. Time freeze got a 0.3 second nerf to the hit delay, which means it's a little bit longer before you get frozen. Does give people a bit more of a chance to get out of it, but it's still a pretty powerful ability. And the void from Malevolent Locust got its resistance increase reduced down to 0.3 from 0.78. It's quite a big drop actually, but the main use of the Locust is to cleanse and purge in a ZVZ situation. That's the most important. The resistances are nice, but the cleanse and purge is what's deciding the fights. And that means that the Locust is still going to be at the forefront of importance in ZVZ for sure. The curse staffs then, the death curse on the one-handed can no longer be reflected, lost the small instant damage, and fixed the delay before the curse activated. Anybody who's ever had death curse on them and tried to block it or parry it or whatever, everybody knows about the little debuff ends, there's a 1 second pause and then it pops. Now it pops straight away, so you don't have to learn that anymore, you'll just have to adjust your timings if you're fighting these curse staffs. But that's pretty good. It does actually mean that it activates quicker, so it's better for the curse staff user because their burst damage goes off quicker and you can get around to reapplying dots faster. Cataclysm on the Damnation staff, the armor reduction has been increased and the damage has been reduced. So the armor reduction doesn't stack. So you can't have multiple curse damnations stacking the armor reduction. The damage nerf was to prevent these like 4 to 5 man teams of Cataclysm bombers in ZVZs just instantly destroying backlines. Still a powerful weapon though, still definitely going to see play in ZVZ all across the board. Next up is the new W spell Fire Artillery. I was talking about this in the meta snapshot. It's an interesting new ability. It's quite good in ZVZ. It's quite good in the open world. Like, it definitely has its uses. In small scale PvP though, it's not Firewall. Firewall is one of the best and most powerful abilities in the game. This isn't Firewall. Therefore, we don't really care. It's quite a fun ability. It's decent in choke points. It's decent at range, like castle sieges, stuff like that. But it really, like, the fire Ws, none of them are as good as Firewall in terms of just hard blocking enemies in small scale. It's a pretty fun ability, though. Have a play around with it. The damage isn't insane, but it's very annoying because people have to work around the fire pools that it creates. Pyroblast, the one-hand fire staff, a favourite of mine, a 1 meter range buff and a damage buff. Definitely going to see this starting to creep back into play. It's just not as consistent as the Infernal, though. If you're in a PvP situation, the Infernal is guaranteed. The Pyroblast, you know, people can block it. You can get it parried and reflected at you, even worse. There's a lot of things people can do to disjoint or dodge the Pyroblast. It's a very obvious wind-up. It's nice to see it get buffed, but it would need to be a lot stronger to see mainstream play. Unsurprisingly, the Frost Staff Ice Shard got nerfed. Everybody's playing Ice Shard in 5v5, so the damage nerfed by 15. People are still playing it. They don't care. Like, it's been nerfed. It's still great. They're still playing it. Onto the Holy Staffs. They've got some buffs trying to make Holy great again. Flash heal. We're noticing a lot of things going to 13 meter range. 13 meters seems to be the default cast range that we're working towards now. So Generous Heal, Holy Blessing and Flash Heal all went to 13 meters. Flash Heal got a slight buff on the heal on it, but probably not enough to replace Generous yet. We'll see. Sacred Pulse got a full rework though. So they've reworked the Sacred Pulse ability. You remember before, you put it on a target, it pulsed and then healed everybody around them. Now, it knocks all enemies in a 5 meter radius around the target away, so it's a knockback. Only the first pulse will do a knockback. The healing only affects a single target now, it doesn't AoE. It's 13 meter range, surprise, surprise, instant cast, 10-second cooldown, 40 per tick heal with a 0.2 stand time. So a massive buff to the heal. Obviously, it's not an AoE now. It's pretty good as a save against diving, though. This is definitely a good anti-dive ability now. I think that's what they were angling for. So the single target save wasn't really as good for one-hand Holy, or for Holy in general, sorry. Obviously, you've got the one-hand Holy Desperate Prayer. You've got the Life Touch with the Channeled Heal. Those are like the big single target saves. This will pair nicely with it. Obviously, you're getting 40 heal a tick. It will knock back anybody that's trying to dive them, which is really annoying for people like trying to stick to their target. We'll see if it sees play. Right now, just nature is running riot. And there's not really been many times during the Albion meta in which the Holy and the Nature Staff were fully represented equally. So there's always one that's better than the other. And what will generally happen is patch by patch, we'll continue to see Holy buffs until finally Holy just takes over and everyone's playing it again. Holy Orb adjusted the projectile to make it hit more targets close more reliably. So just a little quality of life, bit better for the Holy Orb players. Everyone's playing Holy Orb because it's practically as good as an E ability. In fact, it was an E ability at one point, which is why Sacred Pulse, although it's good, it's not Holy Orb. Holy Orb is sort of the Holy Grail, pardon the pun, of Holy Staff W abilities. Holy Explosions, 5-second cooldown reduction. Very, very strong there. 20% cooldown reduction on Holy Explosion E is really good. Desperate Prayer and Divine Protection, the E's for the one hand and the Divine Staff. Both of those got upgraded to 13 meters like everything else. Nature Staffs then, this is where I'm salty. They've reworked Poison Thorns for Nature Staff. It's now called Thorns and it's a Q ability. You put 5 stacks of Thorns on yourself for 10 seconds. Every time you auto attack, it does magic damage in a radius, so you don't need to cast the Thorns anymore. You apply them to yourself and fire them. Every time you get hit, you deal magic damage back to the attacker. If the attacker is a player, it consumes a stack. So it's quite a cool defensive ability, but it removes most of your healing. And this makes me kind of sad because obviously my aspect videos are all based around the old Thorns and the old Nature. So my 5 solo aspect videos, are all different now. That said, you can still solo with this ability. Protection of Nature and Spiritual Seed is still enough to keep yourself up. Apparently you have to pair with something like a Guardian Helm though for the extra amount of healing, and then you just spam Thorns. So all of the aspects are still soloable. You can actually use other builds on some of them as well, but it's just a shame that they changed this. There doesn't really seem to be a way to change it. I actually kind of wish that they made the new Thorns ability for Q, but also kept Poison Thorns on the W, because that would open the path for a more DPS focused healing or nature staff. That would be cool to see some people do that. Maybe the Great Nature with the living armor as well could make a really cool DPS build for nature. However, they reworked it and removed the W to make it a Q. Why we couldn't have both, I'm not sure. Maybe they considered it was too powerful. But this ability won't affect small scale PvP that much, because in a 5v5 you still want your healer, not a guy with Thorns. Rejuvenating Breeze got nerfed, 4-second additional cooldown. It was being played quite a lot. Still, I think, as I said in the meta snapshot, it's a bit overused, but that's not a big deal. Like, it's a cool ability. It's very useful against lots of purges, and it was unsurprising with how powerful it is that it got nerfed a bit. It's amazing in ZVZ as well, so it definitely needed a slight nerf. Circle of Life then for the one-handed. Basically, they've changed this to pair with Thorns. If the caster has 3 Thorn stacks active, it roots and damages all enemies in an 11-meter radius. So cool for ZVZ. Again, this is where I would say you would look at a DPS nature build, which if they had Poison Thorns as well as all this, would actually be quite a scary looking build, because you'd have dots, auto attack magic damage, defensive magic damage, and an AoE root and damage. That would be kind of wild. And then Rejuvenation for the nature staffs has had its heal nerfed from 7.9 to 7.6. So they're slowly nerfing nature, slowly buffing holy, and just paving the way for a meta switch in terms of healers. Quarterstaffs then, Concussive Blow for the Quarterstaffs has been reworked. It's now got a bigger damage, it creates threat on mobs, the stand time is reduced, and the hit delay is reduced. So it's basically now the threat ability for Quarterstaff tanking, which they didn't have. Obviously, threatening strike, threatening smash on the hammers and maces. Quarterstaffs, although they're in the hunter tree, they are seen as a tanking weapon generally. So it's unsurprising they got a threat ability. Cartwheel got nerfed again, 7 to 8 seconds. I don't like this because Quarterstaffs aren't the meta right now. They're not the S tier of tanking weapons. That said, the following nerfs, the Rising Blow and the Tornado, both getting a duration nerf, is fine, because Soul Scythes were a bit cheesy, sort of unstoppable. I didn't really like it, honestly. So I feel that the nerfs there were valid, because there's not really, you can't cleanse them. Yes, you can Knight's Helm, but not everybody wants to run a Knight's Helm because of a 1.25 second knock-up. So slight nerfs there to the Soul Scythe builds in general. Cartwheel though, I still feel a bit salty about that. I feel Cartwheel's one of the coolest abilities in the game. Didn't need to nerf it. It will still get played. Even at 8 seconds, it's still better than any other Q option on a Quarterstaff, but that's just cool to see. Spears, the Impaler, damage nerf. Unsurprisingly, everyone was playing Impaler. It's pretty good. I actually still think, because of the energy hungriness of the Spears, I actually think Deflecting Spin is still a valid W. Impaler getting nerfed was no surprise though. Onto swords then. Parry Strike, cooldown increase, damage reduction. Fearless Strike on the Carving Sword, range reduction. All of the most played abilities. Carving Sword was going crazy. Parry Strike is played by everyone. Parry Strike will still be played by everyone. It will just be slightly less powerful. Carving Swords, as I said in the meta snapshot, are kind of dying down a little bit and making way for the Claymore builds. They're about 50-50. I think representation is equal at the moment, but this nerf is quite a big deal. 2 meter less range on your Fearless Strike means it's less of an escape. It's less easy to keep on your target or get that kill. And it just makes the Claymore seem like the better option, especially as it's much cheaper. Gallatines, slight damage nerf on them. Nothing too major, but people exploding in ZVZs to Gallatines is crazy with the AoE scaling. So they just got a little tweak. Gallatines are still good in ZVZ. They'll still get played. Nothing to see here. Now, the really big change. Crowd control resistance modified. So this has been tweaked and tweaked a little bit over time. It was more severe than this at first, but basically cloth armor, which had no CC resistance, is now more CC resistance than an old hunter jacket. Plate armor stays the same, but leather and cloth get more CC resistance. So now cloth users are as resistant to CC as leather jacket users used to be. Okay, leather jacket users are now slightly more CC resistance. The biggest changes to cloth, like the big jump is there. You're going to see clothies resisting stuff. The assassin's jacket though goes up to 0.26 from 0.10. It's got quite a big leap there. But now a scholar's robe is only slightly less CC resistance than an assassin's jacket. So clothy's got a huge buff here, and this might actually sort of bring us back round towards a double backline meta rather than the 3 up front dive meta that we got, because that's a huge value change to cloth. No longer are you just going to be stun runned or silenced for absolutely ages. I don't really like this, because honestly, cleansing, CCing, crowd control, that's all part of the game to me. That's a super important part of the game, and I just feel that we're just lowering the skill ceiling by being, okay, you're a clothy, but now you can resist CC better. Before, positioning as a clothy was so important. This makes it a hell of a lot more forgiving to be out of position or get caught by the big stuns in a ZVZ. We'll see how it plays out. I'll give it a few months and we'll see. I've been messing around with my Poglog build, which I've got a video coming for soon. I feel that it's okay. We'll just have to see how it plays out. Taunt has now been changed a little bit. So it's been reworked as follows. It's when you're used against creatures, it makes you the target of that creature. Say, you know, it's a taunt. When used against players, though, it now buffs your damage and reduces your defense by 20% for 3 seconds. Now, I looked at this in-game, and I believe, actually, it does something slightly different. Let me just pull it up right now. And if we look at taunt, it's actually 16% resistance reduction for you, not 20, it says here. So it's slightly different in game to what it was there, but people have been using this with the broadsword. So I've seen some broadsword soldier armor builds that just absolutely slap people with this buff. 30% damage buff is huge. Time it with your E, it's insane. So the Taunt Broadsword build is sneaking into the meta, particularly for like 2v2s and small scale right now. So watch out for that. That's pretty scary. Everlasting Spirit, cooldown reduction, pretty good. It's a good ability. It's not as widely played as it used to be because Mage Armor's good right now. Scholars is good for Clothies. Natures are using Druid Robe. But this buff is really good for anyone that uses Cleric Robe, obviously. Tenacity gives you double the CC resistance now, and double again on shoes and helmets. So this is kind of like, okay, everyone else got a CC buff. If plate choose to go CC resistance increase, they can. It's actually quite a big deal. If you take 3 pieces of plate, you basically double the CC resistance of a soldier's armor. You're going to be really hard to CC. Like, you'll have a 0.8 CC resistance, which is insane. Ice Block had the cooldown increased to 50 and then 60 seconds. Again, it got reduced actually. It used to be 60. Then they reduced it because no one was playing it. Now people are playing it. They've nerfed it back to where it was. However, it can now be used after a stun or a silence. So if you're it's a really good anti-dive mechanism because you can use it even if you're stunned or silenced, which is amazing. Druid Cowl, cooldown reduction. People used to play Druid Cowl non-stop at launch for energy management for a team. Now everybody's got their own energy management in various ways. Druid Kel's still not going to be played because fights don't last long enough for a Druid Kel. It's a dive meta, not a fight and reset meta. Launch meta was good because the time to kill was higher, people were looking for openings, fights went back and forth, and resetting with your Druid Kel was super important. Growing Rage on the Royal Hood got nerfed a little bit. Again, slight nerf to the Damnation bombing or the Galatine bombing builds. Emergency heal from the Guardian Helmet got buffed, which is crazy because Guardian Helmet, everybody's loving the Guardian Helmet right now. Buffing the heal is wild because it already removes dots, so it's super powerful in a lot of situations. Sacrifice can no longer be cast on yourself. This basically means for the self-sufficient Cleric Graveguard build, that's now Cleric Guardian, which is fine because, you know, those guys, that's cheaper for them. This is a non-artifact versus an artifact, and the cooldown got reduced, so it's good for saving people now, but it's no good for saving yourself. Mortal Agony, one of the biggest armor piercers in the game, has been slightly nerfed, which is fine. Everybody's playing it. You don't have a lineup generally without a Stalker Hood, so it's cool to see. Okay, so onto shoes. Cleric can blink further. Stalker shoes get a 3 meter blink increase, but a 5-second cooldown increase. This is really good. Stalkers might actually be played now quite heavily. It's a long cooldown, but the fact that it's on par with the Cleric sandals now makes it a lot more relevant for a dive and explosive damage. Remember, Raging Blink increases your damage quite a bit for a short period. That's super cool. Graveguard boots got nerfed to half duration, and the knock-up from Elbow Smash got nerfed. So everything that was most played is being nerfed right now. As is tradition, you know, the most meta stuff, the stuff that's so good nobody uses anything else, should generally be nerfed, or the other stuff should be buffed. The more variety we have in the game, the better the meta is, the more fun and skill-based the game becomes. When everyone spams the same stuff over and over again, it's less interesting. So finally, self-healing sickness for healers. Healers who heal themselves constantly get self-healing sickness. So it's basically a counter to those like solo natures that run around never dying and being annoying. Self-healing sickness is not triggered if the healer heals any other target with a Q ability. So in a group fight, it doesn't matter. This is just for solo healers keeping themselves alive forever. For some reason, SBR have decided they don't want solo healers like being too powerful. Which in a 1v1, they're pretty strong. I'll give them that. But they're definitely counterable. It's not like they're just gods. Generally, people just don't know how to deal with it. And that's why they survive so long. But that's what we've got. A few random fixes at the end if you want to check those out. But that is it. That was actually quite a long video. I didn't expect it to be that long. But I do like to break down the meta. So congratulations. If you are still here watching the video, then I salute you for sticking with it for that long. Thank you very much. Anyway, that's all for now. My next video will probably be either a talk about the recycling of the Adventurer's mounts back into the system and the impacts on the economy, or my build spotlight on the Poglog anti-ganking build. Both of those videos coming soon. Don't forget to like and subscribe, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.